Okay, so welcome to the Vastness of Google podcast. Welcome to the Vastness of Google podcast. I'm Everett Cardy, and I am your host of this podcast, and I'm going to be doing a video today on a very, very famous historical figure, on a very, very infamous historical figure that we're all very, very well aware of, and we're all very well knowledgeable about. And I think that we're all aware of who this person is, and I'm going to get into I'm going to go in depth about this person, who is none other than Martin Luther King Jr. Now, before I even get into that, I do want to address something. On YouTube, for those who go on my channel, you'll find that my handle has changed. Okay. I tried to make it back to my original one as best I could, but this is a channel that I started out of, the whole deleting channels, and there was just, something that happened to my, original channel of why I transferred over to another one, the promotions, and the what's it called? The, uploading restrictions and, that I had to deal with. So there were reasons why I transferred over. And when I did this, I just carelessly, without thought, put in a random handle, and it was what it was. It was the handle, whatever it was before. But I went into the YouTube studio on my phone and changed it to something which is more appropriate. Maybe I'll look up a way to change it, later back to, what I want. I don't know. I tried to put in my regular one, but it wouldn't let me. Just had to try these different things. It's just so weird. Why YouTube doesn't let you change your handle after 14 days. I don't get that. But, it is what it is now. And so at least it has my name in it. At least it's not, spiritual truth motivational. Because I'm not Red Frost Motivation. I don't do motivational speeches on this channel. You won't find that. I'm not Fearless Motivation. I am my name, and I want it to be open-ended. The name of my channel is open-ended. The handle should be open-ended as well. So, I think I did the best that I could with this. And it is, it does have some numbers in there, but at least it has my name, so that's good. So, I'll take it. I wish that I didn't do that careless thing with handles, but I did, and I wasn't thinking, and I didn't think that I would be uploading this channel for, the rest of my life potentially, so this is what I'm, this is the cards that I dealt for myself to deal with, so I just wanted to get that out of the way before even getting into all that I wanted to talk about on this podcast. Okay, so let us take a very, very deep dive into this person's life. And I'm going to be making clips from the, these videos. And let us hope that YouTube doesn't have a problem with it, doesn't take it down, because I will be making clips from these videos, just like any other video that I have going on. So, if it should happen, I'll have to defend myself and email them and state my case and do all that, which I do not want to have to do. So I'm hoping that if I make clips from these videos about these historical figures, that it won't just find it unethical and take it down. I have no intention of doing that. All I'm trying to do is take, clips from these videos and put them up, and, I have no intentions of producing any content that is wrong to produce. And I'm not going to rack my brain around what content is and isn't, because I think that I have self-awareness and common sense. The fact is, I will be making clips from these. I might be making clips from these videos on the video I made on Adolf Hitler yesterday, and this one, and then the other one that I'm going to plan on doing if I feel inspired to do it enough. So, let us hope that I can do it. It's not a waste because I want to make clips from all that. And I do not want to have to write back to them saying, I knew what I was doing, and I have the right to make clips from those videos. And I don't want to have to do that. I don't want to have to receive an email and see one of my shorts taken down and see an email from YouTube saying, your short was taken down. Because one time it happened where I had a short on Anne Shirley. Like the Anne Shirley astrology, and YouTube took that down because I was making an assumption, guessing on her astrology. They didn't really explain the full in-depth reasoning as to it, but I made a video about that, confirming that. So I hope that when I make videos about just shorts about the things that I discuss in these videos, that YouTube will not deem it as wrong. Otherwise, we're going to run into some problems if that's the case. So anyway, I just wanted to clear that out of the way because it's in my heart that I want to say. Now let's dive in. So, Martin Luther King was born the middle of January, the Ides of January 15th of 1929. And this means that he is a Capricorn, although he is not necessarily an embodiment of a Capricorn per se, but an Aquarius. Aquarius fights against the things that are unjust, the things that are wrong, changing up the world, innovating, rebelling, standing up for higher ideals of equality and for the good of humanity, and human rights, and fairness, and lives off of these higher ideals. So as much as he is a Capricorn, he is very, very Aquarian. He was very, very Aquarian in his, actions and way that he presented himself. So, also, the thing that we have in common is that we both have the North Node in Taurus. We were both born with the North Node in Taurus. I have my North Node in that sign, and he has his North Node in that sign. And so that is about values. This is about I am stabilizing my life and standing strong in my values. And he valued, he valued there to be peace and harmony between whites and blacks. That's what he valued, and he was going to stand up for that. And the Capricorn is like, I have a goal, I'm focused, I'm committed, I'm determined, and I'm taking one step at a time to climb up that mountain to achieve that goal. Capricorn is a very, very determined sign. So, that is just a note on his astrology of what is going on. Now, the thing that he is most famous for is leading this movement in the 1950s. This all happened in the 1950s. Well, leads into the 1960s. And it's the civil rights movement. I don't think that YouTube is going to have a problem because all the stuff I'm saying about these people are true things, not just assumptions I'm making. So I don't think there's going to be an issue with it. I don't think, and I hope not. I do not put out inappropriate videos or inappropriate shorts. I don't even swear in my videos. I'm not going to come on and say, F YouTube and to the camera or whatever. So it's like, I'm not going to do that. So, I just wanted to confirm that. Anyway. Now his childhood life. He grew up in the city's Sweet Autumn neighborhood, and he was born in Memphis, Tennessee. And it was home to very, very, in his community, there were a lot of prosperous African Americans that, lived in his community, lived in his local community. That were actually more on the wealthy side when he was growing up, not so poor and without money, without all these kind of things, but African Americans that were highly important, that were that had a fair amount of importance, a high social standing. Now, his goal in life was to create equality and human rights for African Americans against racism. Don't judge somebody by the color of their skin or the way that they talk. They cannot help those things. Their personality, their interests, how they act, how they present themselves, what they put out into the world makes them who they are as unique individuals. Them and their authenticity makes them who they are, not diminishing certain people because of these things that they cannot help, that they were born with, things that they, that are good things to embrace about people, beautiful things to embrace about people, and seeing the unity and diversity, seeing the beauty of these things instead of dwelling on the flaws and dwelling on what is quote-unquote wrong with them. And we are far behind this, and thank goodness that we are. I mean, I am not, obviously if you're hearing me and you know me, I'm not, black, but I do have human decency, and I do have kindness and compassion, and I do have, I am right-minded when it comes to respecting people for who they are. But I make all this content about authenticity and astrology, then you'd think I wouldn't diminish people just because of skin color or voice, the way that they talk. That is what I want to say here. That is kind of the statement that I want to make about that. So he wanted equality and rights because obviously he felt that African Americans were treated unfairly. And they were. There's no two ways around it. They were. For the longest time, they were. Since the Founding Fathers created the Declaration of Independence, they excluded blacks and African Americans. And I'm going to get into that a little bit later. They excluded that, and all throughout history there's been, racism, bigotry, if I'm getting that correct. All this hatred and all this divide between, African Americans and whites. We saw it in the Civil War with the slavery, the war against slavery. Like they were, sold as slaves. Like their humanity and themselves and, who they were taken away from them, and they were sold like, you'd buy products. People do not have a price attached to them. They have souls. We're all human. We're all, human beings, not human doings and human slaves and, martyrs to the system. So, slavery happened, And, it was abolished for the Civil War, and thank goodness that it was. Thank goodness for all of the events that have happened in history, because if it wasn't for all those things, we would be in a very, very different place. And, we recently had the U.S. political return. And you know what? That's a good idea for a video, is the U.S. political return, because that is a very, very significant event that happened where we were looking at redefining our values as a country, as a nation, looking at all the destruction and all the things that the secrets that were unresolved, all the shadows of our nation, because this is the 250th anniversary of America this year, and so we just recently had that, and Pam Gregory has a really, really in-depth video about the U.S. political return. Also, Owning Authenticity, she produced a really, really in-depth video about that, so you can go check out that. But so, I just thought I'd mention that. So, they were, these African Americans were economically disadvantaged. They had disadvantages. They were not as wealthy. They were not as wealthy as whites. They were not as wealthy. They didn't have as much money. They were not economically well off. And they were victims to the injustice that went on between them. And the civil rights movement is famous for peaceful protest. Peaceful protest. And this is kind of the same with Mohandas Gandhi. I pronounced him Muhammad Gandhi. I hope I didn't say that in my other video, Mohandas Gandhi. If I am getting the name correct. Yeah. I got it wrong. See, Mahatma Gandhi. I it's very, very confused. Okay, well, Mahatma Gandhi is the name, and I may discuss that in another video, and he had civil disobedience, and this is like peaceful protest. Well, I'm not throwing glasses at people, and not running and shouting and doing all that, but peaceful protests. There were these sit-ins where these people would just sit, and they would not leave. When people would tell them, leave, get out of here. No, they continued to sit. Because they wanted to fight for their rights. They stood up for themselves. And, all these themes are very, very Aquarius. And I'm going to get into some deep, kind of profound things in this video. So, now, tragically, in April, on April 4th, I found this out, through 1968, something tragic happened. I'll get into that at the very, very end, but he went to Morehouse College. There he studied medicine and law. He was very, very much into that. He got it, he grew up in a very, very wealthy, a middle-class family, and he got a good education, and he grew up with his extended family. He was very, very close with his extended family growing up. And, I read that, I think that his grandma died in 1944 or something, which left a very, very strong impact on him in his life. So, obviously, that it would. Okay. So, his family they were, preachers, ministers. A very, very religious family growing up in the South. Very, very, about, the Southern Black ministry, where, the father and grandmother, were Baptist preachers. That's what they did, is they preached. They told, did about God. That was their position. I don't think that I need to go any more in depth about that. So then, as he grew up, one thing that happened was there was one time when a kid that he knew all of a sudden turned to him and said, "I can't be with you anymore because my parents will not allow me to be with you." Just think about this. Think about this. Just think about this. A kid who was perfectly open-hearted and wanting to be a friend of a black kid at the time. No negative bias, perfectly open, viewed him for who he was, not judging him by the color of his skin, wanting to be his friend, knowing him for the real kind person that he was, and yet his parents forbid him. Now I don't want to make the assumption that they were, racist or whatever, but, what if they were? What if they did have those views? And if that were the case, I would go, as far as saying, that, someone younger and then someone much older restricting you from playing. And, the story isn't clear. Like adults being, racist and prejudice, and kids not being racist. Kids don't have any, young kids do not, I don't think that they have any grievances or grudges or, biases or, that doesn't get formed yet, because your view of life is so superficial and so simple. Once you get into the complex, experience of life, then then new things start getting triggered and you get into all the minutia of life. That's what happens. But then why did his parents agree with this? If his parents supported him being with this friend, why did they just go along with the fact that schools were being segregated and they didn't allow this friend to play with Martin? They just conformed to what the rules were in segregation, because this is what I must follow. This is deep. Saturn's in Aries as I'm doing this video, and one of the videos I saw about it was saying, be in your autonomy, be in your authority. Don't just abide by authority when it doesn't feel true for you, when it doesn't feel right, when you don't believe in it. Aries does what it believes in. And so my question is, did these parents believe in racial equality? Did they either have to just abide by the rule of putting their child, separating their child, or did they have a prejudice? That's the question that you can ask here. But, either way, it is a sad reality that Martin could not play with this kid that he really, really liked, that was a friend to him. Now, 1944 came, and he was 15 years old. Think about this, 15 years old. Very, very young. And he entered Morehouse College. Went to college at 15. So he was very, very, that immediately indicates that he was very bright growing up, very, very smart, very, very well-read, intelligent, all of that. So, entered this college that had a wartime program that probably, had, soldiers and the military going on in there, that would, that in this college would accepted and brought in high school students. including him. So he went there and he studied medicine and law, as I've said before, but he was held back because his parents wanted him to become, religious and join in with the church and the Christianity, but he wanted to pursue medicine and law. So, the parents kind of took him away from pursuing the medicine and law to then pursuing the ministry. And that, the idea of that is kind of sad. How, I was listening to this fearless motivation thing just last night about how don't let other people's opinions and other people's values, them projecting that onto you, and deter you from following your dreams. Because there will be people, naysayers, who will not believe you and doubt you and try to talk you out of pursuing your dreams. But it's up to you to believe in yourself and stand up for yourself and being your authenticity, and follow those dreams. So you could say that. Now, he completed his coursework in the year of 1953. He was influenced by Mahatma Gandhi. He was influenced by this figure with civil disobedience and nonviolence with what he did. He was a member of the NAACP. Which is the National Association for the Advancement of Colored People. It is very, very large, and it is very, very the most influential. I'm reading this off of AI. The most influential civil rights organization in the U.S. As it says here, social, educational, political, and economic equality for Black people. Okay. So that's what it says about that. So then we're going to talk about another very, very profound thing that happened with the civil rights movement, and that was the Montgomery Bus Boycott. How this happened was Rosa Parks was a, Black African-American woman. She, one day she, she was coming home from work, supposedly, and she was tired, and she was worn out from work, and she decided, well, I'm going to sit where I darn well want to sit. And so she decided to sit in the front seat of the, I really, really admire what she did. You have to admire somebody's courage to do this. Somebody's courage to stand up like this and, protest like this. She refused to go to the back of the bus, stayed in the front seat. Then a white passenger, was probably a woman or somebody, came in and, said, excuse me, you're sitting, you should go sit in the back where the other, Blacks are sitting anyway. And she said no, and she protested, and they, they probably had a conversation, whatever, and she refused to give up her seat. Like, she wouldn't just go along with the status quo of the injustices and the inequalities with Black people. She wanted to make it more fair, more just for herself. Wanted to stand up for her ideal of equality, where it doesn't matter where you sit on the bus. But apparently in this day and age it did. And I'm so glad that I'm living here now in 2026 and not 1953 or, at this time in history. So, we're all very, very fortunate to be alive at this particular point in time in history. I'm just going to say that. So, refused to give up her seat. And, the sad reality of this was that, the police came and arrested her, and that was the sad reality. And isn't that sad? She stood up for what she believed in. right? She wasn't committing a crime. Well, apparently she was. She wasn't committing a crime. Wasn't hurting anyone or doing that. She was just standing up for what she believed in, like saying that whites and blacks should be treated equally, should be treated in an equal, fair, just way. And because of her just simply standing up for herself and standing up for her truth, she was arrested for that. Like I find that so sad that she was arrested for doing that. Well, I don't blame her. I blame them for being, racist and having these rules in place and not, understanding that she has feelings about this and beliefs about this, and she was just standing up for what she believed in, and really, really looking at what she did and why she did it. If we look at what she did and why she did it, we wouldn't blame her for doing this. So, now what happened because of this is that an economic strain on the public transit system was placed, and business owners were downturned. Where there were probably less buses, or or something that happened because of this. Then, another thing that happened, and this, be warned, this is kind of a graphic detail that I found out about. Izoa Ware Curry suddenly walked into a department store, and Martin Luther King was sitting there, book signing. And she came in, and she asked, "Are you Martin Luther King Jr.?" Martin Luther King was honest, and he said yes. As soon as he did that, well, bat out of hell happened. Like something came out of nowhere where somebody, and this is an example of the racism towards him, and the racism towards blacks in general, where someone stabbed him in the chest, where this person stabbed him in the chest with a knife. So, that's the gory detail of what happened. The Southern Christian Leadership Conference, I do believe it is called. Yes, Southern Christian Leadership Conference. That's what it's called. He created this. He kind of rallied up the troops to make this what it was. And it gave him a platform to speak off of. Gave him things to say. Gave him a space to voice his truth and voice his opinion through this. Now, also, there was a protest that happened at the lunch counter in an Atlanta department store. There was a protest here with people who couldn't buy lunch, and they supposedly just sat there and were waiting until they would get fed, because they wouldn't just walk out and accept not getting food. So they would sit there until they would get what they want. They would try to prove a point by just sitting. By just not yelling, not screaming, not shouting, not doing all this, but sitting. Just sitting. And standing in their truth when it comes to protesting. Now, another thing is that King was sentenced to Reidsville State Prison because he was on apparently he was on probation, which means he was, supervised for, actions. If you commit a legal crime, you are basically still living, but you were supervised and by, authorities to do this. On a traffic offense, that he committed. Just to throw that detail in there, not that it's too important to throw in. But okay, so what King did was he traveled throughout America and the world, and he lectured. Like he made it known. He made his point known about how he felt about the inequalities between whites and blacks. He made it known. He lectured on nonviolent protest. And the importance of nonviolent protest that was committed in civil rights. Lectured, taught people about civil rights, basic civil rights, and understanding what civil rights are. To understand this, they are legally enforceable guarantees of equal social opportunity, freedom from discrimination. Like these African Americans had civil rights that they were denied for the longest time. The longest, the saga of America, they were denied it from, the get-go, as soon as it got started. So, race, sex, or religion. So just wanted to throw that in there. Okay. Alright, so that's what I wanted to say about that. And so he also met up with a lot of famous activists that were doing that were standing up for equality. Like he found that the more he did this and the further along he got, there were people that were on his side. And I think it is so refreshing to have others on your side when so much of America is racist over this. And so I just think it is so nice that he had so many people on his side as he did. And so many people agreed with him. And imagine the warmth and the support and the, like people get me. It's like when people get you and understand you for who you are and what you're trying to do. When people are on your side, you feel connected. You feel at peace within yourself. You feel like you're moving in a meaningful direction. You feel like you're on purpose. You feel like you're doing the right thing. So, yeah. So, I'm in political leaders. So, there was the Birmingham campaign in 1963, where activists used a boycott and other protests with segregation. Activists used this, other protests with segregation. And other hiring practices and other injustices in racially divided cities. So boycotts were used, other protests were used, and against racism, basically, in these cities. So all of what he was doing and all of the awareness around racism and civil rights and civil disobedience and peaceful protests caught the attention of the news and television at the time with what he was doing. When it comes to the racial inequalities and the violence between white and peaceful Democrats. So then in the spring of 1963, he had a campaign to end segregation at lunch counters, which drew a lot of attention. Segregation at lunch counters. He had plans where people were protesting against segregation and being, and at the time, there were such things as colored restrooms. Colored, I guess, if you want to get so complex about it, there were probably colored white restrooms, colored black restrooms. Like, schools were segregated. And it was very, very, not just segregated by race, but you could see white schools had very, 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 very wealthy, books, and the whole setup, and teachers got paid more money, potentially. And then in black schools, they didn't have a lot of money. The teachers didn't get paid very much. And it was a very, very bad condition. So it's very, very crystal clear the, inequalities that went on. So, all right. Now, August 28th, 1963. At Lincoln Memorial, over 200,000 individuals, assuming that they were both black and white, I'm going to say that they were both black and white, gathered peacefully in the Lincoln Memorial. And this is where King gave his, and you probably know about this, and you probably even heard it, and you can go watch it, his famous I Have a Dream speech. Infamous speech. And it was very, very clear what he was advocating for. Equality between blacks and whites. Peace. And he had a dream for a better world. Following the song, by Bob Dylan about, dreaming for a more peaceful world where there would be, what is your dream for a better world? What do you want the world to be? You can think of that song, A Million Dreams, from The Greatest Showman. You can think of, what you want. I want a world where nobody hacks into others' accounts and steals all this privacy, and there's no war, and there's no, conflict. And I want a world where there's not, where things are more, where things are cheaper and more reasonable with money, because I'm very, very much against money. And just all this, and all the wars going on right now, with Iran and Russia and Ukraine, and our president, who should not be a president of this nation. I dream for a better world, where we would all just get along. Why can't we all just get along? Why can't we just move into the Aquarian age of accepting each other's differences and being open to one another and finding peace and being kind and being considerate of one another, respecting the unity and diversity? Why can't we have that better world? We are at a place where we are not evolved enough. If all this is going on, we as humanity are not evolved enough to move into the Aquarian age fully. I mean, we're already in it, but we're in the very, very beginning stages of it, and it shows. Because if we were truly in the midst of the Aquarian age, I don't think that any of this would be happening in the world right now. And it's a very, very sad state of affairs right now. And so, what he did with the speech was he reframed and clarified what the Declaration of Independence stated, which is that all men are created equal. And he stated, like, you know, the Negro was, you know, pushed down, denied rights, denied equality. And he clarified. You know, he reframed and made more open and, you know, and made more legitimate with the Declaration of Independence is that all men are created equal, and women. And women. Men means women, like, you know, history, like history, well, that's of humanity, women and men. Man, you know, like we say in the face of, you know, man, known to man, if we're talking about, like, I guess, creatures in the wild, or you know, whatever, those National Geographic documentaries. That also means females and males. Like we have these terms, but it really means all men are created equal. Now, also, the Civil Rights Act happened in 1964. And this Civil Rights Act authorized, it made so that the federal government would desegregate public standing. You know, getting rid of, like, this act was so important because it really got rid of a lot of the discrimination, maybe all of it, got rid of the segregation and discrimination that was between whites and blacks. Like, this was very important. And so there was also the Poor People's Campaign, standing up for poor people. There was a march on the Capitol with this. There was the Selma March that happened, very famous. And this Selma March of Selma, Alabama, Selma, Alabama, dramatized the need for a federal, and it may be not using my own words here. I don't know. I don't want to just, you know, I don't want to do these videos and steal others' ideas. You know, I don't want to be that person, and I don't want Adam to come in and ruin me because of that. So, this is not for an English class. This is for YouTube. There's a big difference. And when I write essays, I'm not going to fret about, oh, am I plagiarizing? Oh, am I plagiarizing? Oh, am I copying off? And getting all worked up in the mind about that. Like, no. So, this, basically, what happened was dramatized the need for a federal voting rights law. And then this would support African Americans when it comes to their voting rights. It would help them vote. So there's also the March on Washington for jobs and freedom. You know, for both individual jobs, like jobs becoming more equal, and freedom. A peaceful political rally which shed light on the injustice that Black Americans continue to face throughout America. This just highlighted it. This happened because of this injustice still going on. Okay. So, now, King was challenged. Martin Luther King was challenged because of certain, interesting. You know, what do I have to say about this? I disagree. Let's just say that he was supported by Black people who believed in the power of Black individuals, Black power enthusiasts, and obviously when they support him, if they were being judged, like if their race was being targeted and treated unjustly, surely they would be on the side of him. So I don't quite understand that, and I don't quite agree with that. I think that they supported him with that. He broadened his approach to include concerns other than racism in his life. Also, you can throw in that. There was the strain and changing dynamics of the civil rights movement. Okay, so this is all very, very hard on Martin Luther King Jr. And he probably suffered mentally and physically for this with the marching and the dynamics of what happened with the civil rights movement. In April of 1967, on April 4th, 1968, I should say, April, let's just say, I'm a little bit unsure about this. So let me, okay. So, I have it written down for a reason. So, on April 1967 in New York City, he committed, he didn't support us going into Vietnam. He didn't support us moving into Vietnam, and what did we learn through that war? What did we learn as a nation through that war? We learned that drafting soldiers and then throwing 18, 19-year-olds into a foreign nation with all these massive threats with all that they had going on with their technology that they used in the war, throwing these individuals into this war was wrong. Oh my gosh, I cannot imagine. I cannot imagine being drafted. I am around that age. I cannot imagine being drafted. Wow. It wouldn't happen in my life. It's not that I'm entitled to not being drafted. It's just it won't happen because it's wrong. Nobody should be drafted into war. Nobody around my age should be drafted into war, me included with that. So, alright, so then, April 4th, 1968, he was, shot, on the balcony of the Lorraine Motel. Imagine this. We just, okay, let's see. 10, 20, 30, 39 years old. 39 years old. And your life ends right there. All that you've done in your life. All the, you're feeling so good. You stand up for your, for what's right. You, have all these, protests and make all these, very, very strong cases why, blacks and whites should be equal, and did all the stuff that he did, and then somebody comes in and has to ruin that by shooting him. The difference between him and Hitler is that Hitler was evil. He did evil, and has speeches, and he did it to himself. So these two are very, very different. Like with Hitler, we look at ego and the destructive qualities of the ego and the narcissistic need for power. With Martin Luther King, we look at the desire to stand up for what is right and protest for right and equality. And some, jerk of a person has to, person who does wrong, who commits evil, has to come in and shoot him. Boom. You're suddenly living and then you're suddenly gone. It just, you can't put it into words. It's just, and it caused riots against whoever did this, and it caused a lot of people were very, very disturbed at the time with 100, over 100 cities across the country. And then the president of the country at the time, President Johnson, declared a mourning, a day of honoring this man with all that he has done, all that he has contributed to America and the world, with all of his, standing up for, racism and all the things that he has done. Like, this man with all that he has done should be honored for who he was. And this is why in the middle of January, we have, Martin Luther King Day on that Monday in January around his birthday, which honors, him and what he did. And let's just be real about it. The person who actually committed this murder was James Earl Ray. And, interestingly, members of King's family came to raise defense. You could ask yourself, why did they come to his defense? If he did something so terrible as kill a member of their family, to kill this man who did these great things, why would they come to his defense? Maybe he was forced into it. Maybe, that's worth digging into. That's worth delving into and exploring why that was the way it was. So, that is what I want to cover in this video about Martin Luther King Jr. as a very Capricorn Aquarius figure in history. I hope that you enjoyed this episode of the Vastness of Google podcast. It is the Vastness of Google for a reason, and not, if I had an astrology podcast, it would be the Cosmic Sky with Everett Carty, but I don't want to box myself into just astrology. So, I would easily do that. I would easily call this podcast Look to the Stars, or, the Cosmic Sky, if I had an astrology podcast, but I wanted to make this open-ended, and so that is who I am. And so I hope that you've enjoyed this episode. I hope that you consider sharing this and liking this, and share this one anyone who is interested in this person and interested in American history at all. I've become very, very interested in history. I'm in the middle of watching documentaries off PBS and all those things, which I plan to get back to. I'm just fascinated to study all these things and, to consider, like, thank goodness that these things happened, because otherwise we would be living in a very, very different world if history was not the way it was. And this is Capricorn. Capricorn is the sign that corresponds to history, because it's like all the lessons that we've learned and all the trials that we've been through and all the events that led up to today. So that is what I want to say in this video. I hope that you enjoyed it. I will see you in the next episode of the Vastness of Google podcast. Take good care.